Hey guys, Shalom, Yahweh Shema, Thawaah, Shema Shai. It's Thawaah coming to you straight live from the Essential Sisters Workshop. Today we are going to be going over how to make showbread for the Sabbath service. We've been having Sabbath service every Saturday. Just a little backstory, because I've been in school for about 8 years. I've been making showbread for about 2 years. So I just wanted to be able to exemplify how to get that done. I do have some sisters with me. I've got Sister Mathanah and I got Sister Thaqawamah with me. They're gonna be onlookers while I show you guys how to get the showbread made. Okay, so we're gonna begin, of course, with the ingredients. Anytime you start a recipe, you always wanna make sure you already have all your ingredients out. You don't wanna be pulling from different sources when it's time to start. So I have it all laid out here for you guys. Just to go over what we're working with here, remember we're making bread. So we need a pack of instant yeast. You can get active dry yeast or instant yeast. Always remember when you're working with your yeast that you want to make sure your packet is within date. You don't want to use expired yeast because it's not going to rise. So we've got our yeast, we've got an egg. Now with this egg, you want to make sure that it's warm. So when you're baking, of course, you want to make sure that all your ingredients are warm because of moisture and air. So I'm actually going to put this on the stove right here. And I'm only going to heat it up for like a quick minute. It doesn't need more than that because it is going to start to boil, of course. So I'm going to put that on for a quick minute. And since we're covering heat, I'm going to go ahead and turn on my oven. Now, I'm not baking the bread in the oven, but I am going to use the oven kind of like a hot box. I learned that from Captain Thaq. Shout out to Captain Thaq. He taught me that little skill, which has made a huge difference in my bread. So you can always let it sit out when it's rising, but I like to put it in the hot box. So I'm actually gonna let it preheat for like 5 minutes or so, and then I'm gonna turn it off and just let the heat do its thing.
So like, are you saying that you essentially put it on the stove while it's rising?
No, so you can make sure that your house is 70 degrees or higher because you want the area for the bread to rise to be warm. I mean, you can put it on the stove and use the heat from the stove, but he just taught me a quick, quirk to make sure that it actually rises. And I've made like 6 loaves since then, and it's perfect every time. So I just heat the oven up and then I turn the oven back off and let it just have its natural heat. So that's why you want to go ahead and do that part before you start anything else. Warm your egg, heat your stove. Remember, the first steps are warmth. Worry about the warmth after. So we're on to the next step. So when I was with you before, we went ahead and put the yeast in the warm water. So now, like I was telling you, food talks to you. So it's got a clear froth at the top of it. So that's my indication that I'm ready to pour it. So this means the yeast has been activated. I'm going to pour that into my mixing bowl. And then I'm going to add my warm egg. And I'm also going to add, 3 tablespoons of sugar. So I'm going to take my measuring spoon. Remember with these spoons now, there's a difference between tablespoon and teaspoon. So I'm looking for a TB, not a TS. So I'm going to use 3 tablespoons. Sugar and salt look so much alike. Sorry guys. All right. So I'm adding my 3 tablespoons of sugar. And then I'm going to give this a nice stir. Blend it all up nice and smooth. And then after that, I'm going to add 2 tablespoons of oil. Remember, you gotta watch that TSTV. Now with this oil, I've used olive oil. But you can use whatever oil you have in your fridge. I know people are kind of sensitive about their oil, so you can use whatever oil you prefer, but I used olive oil. And then I'm going to do my 1 teaspoon of salt. Let's see. I don't know where my teaspoon measurement spoon is, so I'm just going to do 2 1/2 scoops. So you're going to see me do this twice, but it's because I have a 1/2 teaspoon. All right, so now that those ingredients are in, I'm going to actually combine those together. And now it's time for my flour. Now, one thing you want to remember with this step is you want to add flour as you go. You don't want to clump it all in there because you want a nice consistent dough. So one thing a lot of people don't know about flour is once you add it to a liquid, it really starts to activate that moisture in that air. And that's why you don't want to just clump it all in there at one time. So this recipe actually calls for 3.5 scoops of flour, but I always just start with 3 scoops. And if I need that other half, I'll put it in after I've done all of my mixing together. So, the rule about flour is you don't want to pack it into your scoop. So I'm actually going to use another measuring scoop to fill up my cup of flour until I have a cup, but I'm not going to shake it and I'm not going to pat it down because you want an accurate cup of flour. So that's 1. I usually do 2. Okay. And then I give it a little stir. And then once that color changes, I add my last cup of flour.
So how, you said you put 3 in, but how do you know if it's actually last like half?
Like I was telling you, food talks to you. So if you just listen to what it's telling you, especially now, you see how it's starting to solidify? I'm gonna actually take this whisk out and I'm gonna use my hands. So that aesthetic on my hands is gonna be able to tell me, hey, you need this next piece of flour or not. So I'm actually going to start using my hands to mix the rest of it. And see how it's still really super sticky and it's coming back up off of my fingers? It's telling me I need that extra flour. So sometimes, like I said, if your house was already hot, if your egg was maybe warmer, if your water was hot, just depending on the temperatures of what you already had put in your mix, that's how you know if you're gonna need that other 1/2 cup of flour. So I need it. So I'm actually going to add it. But again, I'm only gonna add a little bit, see what I'm working with. So see, that did it. So I didn't even need that whole extra cup, 1/2 cup of flour. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm just folding the dough together. And remember, I'm listening to what it's telling me. So it's already starting to separate. You see how there's pieces left in there? It's ready to be left alone. It's telling me it doesn't want me to touch it or mess with it anymore. Now again, if it was still sticky, if I was still spreading it out and there was still liquid, I would be wanting to work with it. But it's already told me, hey, I'm ready to be left alone. So I'm actually gonna leave it here in the bowl because it needs to rise for an hour. So what I'm actually gonna do next, a sheath of oil on top of this dough so that while it's rising, it doesn't separate and have them ugly little cracks in it. It'll keep it nice and firm. So I'm actually going to put some oil on my hands. And I'm just gonna pat it down. Now remember, when this video first started, I heated up the oven. So because it's already hot in there, I don't need to cover this. Now you can cover it. You can cover it with a clean towel. You can cover it with plastic wrap, but I've already got my little trick, thanks Kat. So I'm actually just gonna throw this in here. And and it's gonna rise on its own. All right, we'll be back with the next step. Just a quick recap. Just remember we're here to make showbread for the Sabbath service. So as we were talking about in the beginning, we listed our ingredients. We actually decided to go ahead and get our warm water, our warm egg. We created our hot box for warm. We combined all of our ingredients together and then we made a loaf. So we put that dough in the oven for about an hour. So remember, temperature matters. So if your house is cold, you might want to let your dough rise for about 2 hours. But as the tip I gave you guys, I actually put it in the oven already for an hour. And this is what it looks like when it comes out. And as you can see, like I was telling you guys, food talks to you, especially when you're baking. And this dough has already told me that it's ready for me to work with it. It has tripled in size. So of course you saw how it looked while it was rising, and this is the finished product. So I'm gonna actually take this dough and make it into a loaf. So I'm gonna teach you guys how to form that loaf. So I need the risen dough, I need my loaf pan, and I need my oil. So I just have canola oil. I'm gonna profusely and generously spray this loaf pan. So it's gonna be an easy slide out when the dough is done. And then I'm gonna set this over here to the side because we're gonna have to do some kneading work with the risen dough. So, you need flour. Always remember when you're doing your kneading that less flour is the best. So you don't want to use all of this flour at one time. What I'm actually gonna do is I'm just gonna sprinkle my surface, flour my hands, and I'm going to actually put this dough onto my floured surface. So I know you guys keep hearing me say, food talks to you. So this step is really important. It takes the longest, it's the most tedious, but it's worth it in the end. So I'm gonna take my dough and I'm just going to start kneading it. Now when you knead, of course the dough's laying here flat. Just fold it, push, fold it, push, fold it, push. So after you've done that a couple of times, you're just gonna touch it. Give it a good tug. So what I'm looking for while I'm kneading this dough is stickiness. So you have to knead. And a lot of people use hand mixers, but I find it's just more virtuous, more righteous, more consistent to use your own hands. It's just rewarding for me. I like to cook, I like to be in the kitchen, and with practice, I have figured out that this dough is going to tell me when it's ready. So like I said, I'm folding, I'm kneading, nothing sticky. So you can see right here, some stickiness as opposed to some solid forms here. So I do still have a little bit of kneading to do, but I still have flour on my surface. So like I was telling you guys, I don't want to add any more flour. I'm gonna fold, push, fold, push, fold, push. All right, so my dough is ready. Another way to tell if it's ready is you can pull it. If it comes back to you, it doesn't need anything else. If you pull it, elasticity, yes. If you pull it and it just stays like that, then it needs a little bit more flour. Now I do see some more wetness here, which means I didn't need enough. I'm just gonna put it on my surface, cover my hands, and I'm gonna get this stickiness out of the dough. Sometimes you have to knead for 5 minutes. And the reason why you have to do it so long is because this is a big mound of flour. And so it has different levels in it that might still be sticky. But again, it didn't need too much more because like I told you, to check it, you can pull it. If it comes back to you, it's ready. So this is ready. So now that it's ready, I'm actually going to turn it into a square so I can roll it. Remember, this has to go into a loaf pan. So my fingers are underneath the dough here, and I'm just gonna pull. Underneath the dough, pull. underneath the dough, pull. But see how it's not fighting me, it's coming back to me? That's how you know it's gonna be a really good, nice, fluffy loaf of bread. All right, so I've got it in kind of like a square here. So now I'm just gonna roll it. All right, and then I'm actually going to put this in to my loaf pan. So that's gonna set right here. And then this needs to rise for an hour. So at this step, this is when you can get creative. I haven't figured out how to get super creative, but you can put those little indentions in there, make cute little flowers. You can put an ISUPK in there if you want, but I'm about to just stick this in the oven. All right, so this is about to go in the oven and we'll be right back. All right, guys, so we've waited the hour and this is what it looks like once it's risen again in your hot box for about an hour. So now that it's risen, it's time for it to bake. Now this is gonna be a pretty good loaf. As you can see, it's over the loaf pan. So when it's done rising, you waited your hour and you wanna know, hey, is this ready for me to bake it? It is, because it's pouring over the sides of the loaf pan. You know what a loaf of unsliced, uncut bread looks like. So when this comes out of the loaf pan, it's gonna be nice and pretty. It's gonna have a nice top to it. So now that we've let it sit for an hour, we're gonna go ahead and put it in the oven. All the steps, so a super quick recap. Of course, when you make bread, you wanna make sure that your environment is warm. You also want your ingredients to be warm. So we had a warm egg, we had warm water, and I created a hot box. With the oven, I preheated it, and then I turned it off after it's preheat, so that while my dough rose, is that the right word? Rose? Was that right? It would be warm enough in there. So after we combined all the ingredients, we made our dough. Remember that we had to knead the dough on a flour surface. When you're kneading though, you always want to remember that you want to add flour as you go. You don't want to just dump a whole bunch of flour onto your dough because you want to let it spring back to you. And of course, you can review these steps as you go through the video. And then after we did that, we created a roll in a loaf pan and put it in the oven. So I heated my oven to 425 for 15 minutes. And this is the finished product. We've got a nice, hefty loaf of showbread. So when you're working with bread and you're doing showbread, while it's still hot, you want to add your butter. I would not recommend skipping butter. I would make sure you put butter on the stove. So I'm just gonna take a stick of butter. Now this is when you want your loaf to just be a normal loaf of bread. But I like to flour mine. So I'm just gonna show you here. You're just gonna put butter across the loaf. Now this came right out of the oven. So this butter is gonna melt on the loaf. And then that's what I was telling you, sisters, if you wanna just butter it, you can. But I like sweet bread. All right, so you want to let your loaf sit there in the pan for at least an hour before you take it out. If you need to serve it right away. I don't need to serve this loaf right away, so I'm gonna take it out of the pan. So I like sweet bread, so I've actually taken some cinnamon, some butter, some brown sugar, put it in this cup. And I'm just going to brush my loaf with it. And that's why I'm going to go ahead and take it out of the loaf pan, because I want to cover the entire loaf. But I do want you to see the loaf out of the loaf pan. But just remember, if you need the bread, like, I mean, you're going to be using it for a meal the same day, you're going to be slicing it the same day, you want to let it sit in this loaf pan for at least an hour. But because I'm not going to be using this anytime soon, let's see if I can get it out of here. Okay, so this is the loaf of bread out of the loaf pan. Couple of things to note that I like I said, I want mine to be sweet, so I'm just going to, lather the sides, but that can be done later. I just wanted to show you guys the finished product. Again, if you're gonna slice it, you want to make sure it cools for at least an hour. But that's it. any comments, please put it in the chat. Please like, share, and subscribe our YouTube channel. What is it? Sisterhood Essentials Workshop. Because I always want to say essential before I say sisterhood. I didn't like that. We gotta do that last part again.